Hey everybody, Dr. Adam here. This is the apiary at BeeWise Farms, and today we are doing splits. I started this yesterday. We got queens in from my former mentor in California, and now we're going to be doing a whole set of splits all day long. I've already gotten through a dozen in the last about 3 hours, and we're getting ready to get to the big ones, those ones over there where you see the tripod next to it. So I'm going to take you along for this as part of your Heroes to Highest course. We're going to go through these big colonies and do some splits. And so I'm going to take you through the colony, and then I'm going to basically kind of set up the camera so that you can see what I'm taking out frame by frame to make these individual splits. Just to get an idea, these colonies right here, these two 10-frame colonies, I just between those two got, I think it was 7 splits out of the two of them. These two over here, I guess it's the second and third to the last that you see there, we're going to probably anticipate a huge number out of there. I would imagine somewhere between 5 and 6 splits each to get those colonies under control so that we don't run a risk of swarming. All right, so let's get into the hives, and we'll see how this goes. All right, so this is the hive that we're going to go through. This is hive N11 up here, November 11. This hive we went through on May 15th, was the first time I'd gotten into this hive this season, unwrapped it, reversed it, meaning I took the boxes that were occupied by brood, put them to the bottom, and added some space on top. We should have about 40 frames of bees in here, according to the notes from last time, which is a ton of bees to have this time of the year. And so let's go into this and start doing some splits. Okay, so let's get into our colony. See what's going on. So the first thing I'm going to be doing here is I am going to be really trying to determine where this brood has gone up to. Now, I wouldn't suspect it would come way up into this box. Like, I'm going to pop this top open right here, and this box right now is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 boxes deep. So let's see what kind of activity we have in here on the top box. Again, this was a really big colony. Wow, look at that. Really big colony. Just a couple weeks ago. And what we did at that point, we had reversed this hive, so the brood chamber should be down at the bottom, and then stacked hive, empty drawn frames, empty hive bodies with drawn frames on top of that. So we have all of these drawn frames up top here, which gave this colony enough room to put a lot of resources in. We really had a warm up this last week. We were in the 80s most of the week here in the UP. Everything is flowering. I've got apple trees that are flowering right now. Forsythia's flowering right now. The pines are putting off a ton of pollen. So this colony is just packed. So we've got 6 boxes deep here. Now, we got to do something about this. If I don't do anything about this, we're going to end up having a swarm situation. So we need to take this box by box, go through this colony. This will be the longest time you spend in a colony, is going through an overwintered hive like this and making splits. So I'm going to knock these bees off first, and we'll go ahead and open this up. So you see how I just knocked that cluster right off the top there. Nothing too big. All right, I'm going to take my spacer off the top here. That's been there, that was all winter. So that was our top entrance for the winter. All right, so you can see a lot of bees here right now. So let's see what's going on here. What I would hope is going on here is that they're storing honey up here. There's been a pretty good flow that started because of all the heat very, very early up here for the UP. So let's see what's going on here right now. Now, it is overcast today. There's supposed to be a storm coming in, and so you have a lot of the foragers that have not left here. This is a full honey frame right here. I don't even have to look at it. I can feel just by the weight on there that that's a full honey frame. Okay, so they're storing honey up here. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to dive in here into these middle frames to see if there's actually any brood up here. If maybe for some reason she ended up coming back up here after we had reversed this colony. Again, very heavy frame, likely brood. It's kind of difficult to see what's going on in the cells here, mainly because of the conditions, but there's eggs in here. So I can see that this frame has eggs. Now I want to make sure that I have eyes open for the queen, So one side has eggs, the other side is completely pollen bound. You can see this side here has nothing but pollen on there. So likely what we're seeing here is this colony is really struggling to get space. They're running out of space because of all the resources coming in and the size of the colony. So this frame has eggs, the queen is not on there. What we need to make a split is we essentially need 5 elements. Well, we need 5 frames. We need a frame of eggs, a frame of capped brood, that's your next generation that's going to be helping you out there. Then we need a frame of food, that'd be pollen and honey, but mainly pollen we want on that. A frame that has some honey on there, and then an empty frame for them to expand. So what I like to use when I'm doing splits are these boxes here. This is a plastic nuke box, and I use these every single year to do splits. I don't sell these. These medium nuke boxes are hard to come by. When I do sell my nukes, I move them into different boxes. So we're going to start with this. So I'm going to take this box off and set it over here on my work surface so we can go through this together. Okay, so here we are at my work surface. Now you see that I've got 2 things here. I've got my box over here on the left that everything's going to be going into. This could be just a regular box. This doesn't have to be this 5-frame nuke, but we're making nukes here today. And then this is what we're going to be working from. The reason I did this is mainly because this makes it easier to film by putting it on this surface. This is a DR power wagon that I use as basically a table and to move all of my equipment in and out of the apiary so I don't have to kill my back. All right, so here is our frame that we started with. This is a food frame on one side, and then it's got eggs on the other side. Now I know you can't see this on the camera, but I'm going to just walk you through each one of these to let you know what's on there. Again, looking to see if the queen's on there. She's not on there. That's going to be my center outside frame. So it's going to be the frame right to the outside. One, because it's got pollen on one side. It's got a few eggs on the other side. And then the next frame that I put into that is going to be another brood frame right there in the middle. So you can see that these ladies are a little bit feisty right now. Again, this is kind of a cool day today, so there's not a lot of foraging activity. It's still warm, but not as warm as it has been, and so we got a lot of foragers here. Okay, so this frame right here is basically pollen for the most part and a little bit of brood. We've got this back here. This is mostly brood, both capped and uncapped, and a nice power band of pollen there. Looking for my queen here real quick. This will be my second frame in this nuke if she is not on here. If she is on here, I'll likely just move her. Alright, so she's not on there. We've got a lot of larvae in there, stuff that's ready to get capped, and then stuff that is already capped. We're going to go ahead and put that in. So now I've got essentially a kind of capped brood frame and an egg frame in there. So right here, this is going to be my brood section of this particular nuke. So what I need to do next is I'm going to take one of my caged queens that I've got here. We've got a queen here with her attendants. You have the candy end that has a candy plug in there. I'm going to uncork that. So when you're installing this into the 2 frames, it's important that the candy plug is not facing down. If that candy plug faces down and the attendants die, it can block the exit for the queen to get out and can trap your queen in there. So when you're installing this, it's important that it goes in candy plug up. And then in 2 days, I will come back just to make sure that she's out. A lot of times with these candy plugs, I'd say probably half the time, oops, I dropped her down in there, so I'm going to grab her. About half of the time with these candy plugs, they uncork it, the other half they don't. So you always have to check back in a couple days. And then what I do is I just pinch that between the 2 frames. So it's in the wax, and it's just pinched between the 2 frames. I've seen people do it a lot of different ways to just hold her in place. There's some neat new kind of products out on the market you can use to do that as well. This is just how I've always done it. So we've got our 2 brood frames here essentially for our nuke. This frame right here has honey that they're starting to store, and then wax that they're drawing. That's a nice outside frame because it's kind of something that they can work on. Now I know that there was pollen on this frame, and a lot of brood on both of those. So they're good on the pollen stuff. So I'm going to face that honey side that they're filling out to the inside of my nuke. And I'm going to press those all to the outside now. Those are my outside frames working in. The next thing I'd like here, it really doesn't matter at this point. I've got a lot of both brood and pollen in there. There is quite a lot of pollen in here, I will tell you that. This colony is getting a little pollen bound. meaning that there's just a lot of pollen. This is a lot of uncapped brood, so I'm not going to take that out and put that in there. What you can tell though, this is all pollen right here. Very, very pollen bound. You can see that there's some queen cells that are up on the, or queen cups that are on the bottom there. No eggs in them just yet. No queen on here just yet. Lots of brood again, and lots of pollen. Actually, because of how this is going, I'm going to set this to the side. We'll probably do another nuke out of this, depending on what I see here next. Again, tons of pollen. This colony has got just an enormous amount of pollen in here. So that means that we need to relieve some of this pressure. So what we're seeing is that it just, the pollen that's coming in, it's just huge. And by what I mean by that is essentially that this frame is all pollen from this end to right here. And then it starts with honey. So completely bound out for brood. There's a little bit of tiny brood here on the bottom, but nothing major. So that is a huge pollen frame. So just keeping track of what I got here, I've got a brood frame, a pollen frame, so that's enough for another nuke right there to start another nuke. And another honey frame. So there's 3 frames of my nuke my next nuke right there. And then this would be a working frame. So I'm going to put this working frame in here to the outside. You can see there's even some dead bees on here from last season. I'm going to go ahead and just take those off. They will clean that type of stuff out, but it is a little bit of extra labor. Again, I haven't really gone through this colony very much, well, until a couple weeks ago. So that's just a little bit of remnants there from last season. All right, so again, we've got 2 brood frames in here, and then a food frame over here. This is kind of an open frame for them to work with. And then I'm just going to take one more peek in here and just see what we've got on these. This one is mostly, it's got some open area on the back. It's got mostly food on the other side. So I'm going to take this, and that's going to be my middle frame there. So that rounds me out there. So that's a food frame there, 2 brood frames, a food frame, and then one for them to expand. And that is my nuke right there. So I'm going to go ahead and close that up. And that split is now done. I've now just taken 1 colony and turned it into 2. Now I'm going to continue doing this through this entire colony here, and we'll see how many we get out of this. I can see right here, I've already got the start of a second one here. So I'm going to go ahead and move this box to another area, and then prep my other box, and we'll go through another box together. So this is just a monster colony. Here's our second box right here. So this colony is floor to ceiling bees. So eight deeps, or 6 hive bodies deep. You can tell I'm pretty tired. I've been doing this all morning. So 6 colonies, or 6 boxes deep. We've got 48 frames of bees in here. So if we did nothing, this colony would for sure swarm. We'd have a huge swarm that would come off of this. I took those frames that we had left in the last box and put them into this box, kind of oriented them. We have 2 brood frames, and then we've got a food frame right here. So one thing I would want to say, first of all, is if you just wanted to split this by taking, we have 6 boxes that are like this, full of bees and likely full of brood. I would need to check to make sure there's brood in here, and that there's a frame of eggs and a frame of cat brood. All the stages of brood is essentially what you want, because you want a workforce that's coming out the whole time. But I could take this box and just go set it on a bottom board somewhere, and this is a perfectly fine even split right here. So just keep that in mind, and I likely will do that with a couple of the boxes on this colony. I'm running out of room in the apiaries. We've got enough room here for about 60 colonies right now, holding nukes, and we're quickly approaching that. So, okay, so let's get into this one. So again, always starting from that outside frame, making sure that. Now, I'm not moving as slowly as I would normally move during an inspection, mainly because I've got a lot of colonies to go through. So here's that economies of scale and how that changes how you work bees. It's why commercial beekeepers oftentimes are working very quickly through colonies, because they got to get through colonies. All right, so food frame, nice food frame there. Pollen, nectar, all the goodness right there, and then nectar on the backside. So we're having a good nectar flow right now and a huge pollen flow, very early in the season for us here. It's like summer just started. We went from like winter to summer this year. All right, next one, complete pollen frame. complete pollen frame on the back as well. So nice food frame. So we've got a honey frame, nice pollen frame. Next one I would expect would be brood. And pollen bound is what we're looking at here. Tons of pollen here, not a lot of space for brood on that one side. This side's got lots of space for brood on here. So I'm going to go ahead and put this into our split over here. And now this is going to be an 8-frame split. So I'm literally, this is kind of like what I had said, I could take this entire box and just go put it on. I am not going to completely fill this out. I'm going to put a 5-frame split in here, or maybe a 6-frame split, and then add a couple of empty frames. What I'll do with this box is I'll go ahead and put that on another bottom board and then add a box on top of it with drawn comb. If you don't have drawn comb, you obviously don't have that luxury, but I have drawn comb. So I'll add a drawn comb box to the top of this, and essentially those 2 boxes, I'll let that sit for about maybe, well, I'm going to be back in it in a couple days, just like that last one we did. That caged queen, I'm going to have to come back and release that queen. You always want to come back no more than 48 hours after you release her, and make sure that she's out. About 50% of the time they chew her out of the cage with that candy plug, and the other 50% of the time they don't. So you can oftentimes have a dead queen if you just leave it in there. Alright, so this is a good brood frame right here. I'm going to leave that one in here. So what will end up happening is both of these will end up being splits. So I'm going to just go back here real quick and just make sure that's a full food frame. So we just have food resources in here right now. This is our brood frame right here. It's got nice brood, all stages of brood on that frame right there. Again, looking for my queen just to make sure that she's not on there. All stages of brood on that side, including eggs. So there's a good brood frame for that one. Full pollen frame. Again, big pollen frames on here. This side is all stages of brood, mostly young brood. Nothing's really capped. Again, I don't see my queen on here. Just scanning the frame real quick. Queens are something that, and I'm going to flip this around, mainly because the brood is on the outside, and I want this brood to come to the inside. This is all pollen on that side. So this is the one time that I will kind of change things around, mainly to make what I want, which is that classic brood orientation. Again, another food frame. So we got food, food, brood, brood here. Brood, brood, food, 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 food. I'm going to take our brood here, keep that all together. I'm going to add a queen inside of here. We've got brood, brood, food, food on this one, I believe. It's always good to come back and check. Yeah, brood, brood, food, food. All right, and then let's just double check this one here. That's all pollen. And that's our brood. So I'm going to actually flip this one around. Brood's on the you want the brood on the inside. So again, reorienting this, not a big deal right now. You're going for that classic shape. And then this is a full brood frame. Both sides on it has brood. So I'm going to put that, because that back of that one is pretty full. I'm going to put that one in the middle. So now we've got 3 frames of brood there, 2 frames of brood here. We've got this frame right here, which is basically a building frame. I'm going to put that on the outside here. So, building frame, food frame. Just double check there. Brood frame with food on the back. So build frame, brood frame, so it's food on the back, brood on the front, brood frame, brood on the front, food on the back, and then a build frame. So we've got brood on 3 frames here and then 2 build frames. Again, I'm going to put a queen right in the middle here. I'll put a queen right in the middle of the brood chamber here. We made this one colony has now turned into 3. So we have 3, well, it turned into 3 nukes. We took off that first nuke, and now these are 2 nukes onto their own. So now we've got a total of 4 hives out of this one hive. We've still got 4 boxes to go through. So let's go ahead and pop our queen in here. Take out that candy plug, or that cork plug on there. Okay. Move that to the center. Move this all to the center. And now I'm going to add some drawn frames to the outside. Alright, so these are just drawn frames from last season. Whoops. Alright, so just drawn old frames. And we just are making sure that we're giving space. So I will not only will I add this space to the outside, I will also be adding a full drawn box on top of each of these, giving them enough space. I'll put these both on feeders as well, as I do with all of my new colonies that I get going, and we'll be able to rock and roll. But these are two very strong splits right now. You can see lots of bees in there. Each one of these probably has, I mean, there was a ton of nurse bees in here. This bottom, you can't see it, but the inside of this is coated with bees. So two good splits. So we got 4 more boxes to go through here to fill this out. I'll add a couple of drawn frames in here and go place these real quick, and then we'll go through the next ones. All right. Again, November 11, just huge. All right, so another full box here. What I'm going to do with this one is I'm actually not going to do any more splits off of this like we've been doing, but rather I'm going to be doing just an even split. All I'm going to do is I'm going to check this box, see if there's all the elements that I need there, make sure I know if the queen's there or not. If she is not there, I will add a queen and go ahead and put this on another stack, add another box to it, and it'll be rocking and rolling here in no time. So this one, we're just checking if the queen is present and if we have all stages of brood. I would imagine, you know, seeing what's going on in the top, we're going to be filled out with pollen and nectar pretty much all the way through this colony. That's all nectar. I'm just going to set that there to give myself some room here to work with. Whole food frame. Rock and brood frame. You can see cap brood all the way through. No eggs on the outside. No queen that I see there. Big rock and pollen brood frame. A lot of pollen coming in right now. We actually may have to do some pollen trapping here soon, mainly because we're dealing with a situation here where we've got just a tremendous amount coming in. You can see that was an old queen cell, or a new queen cell. So that queen cell was a few days from being capped, and so what that's telling me is this colony is getting ready to swarm, which I would expect based on how just jam-packed this thing is. So that was a queen cell that I ripped open when I was popping these boxes off. Now I could have taken that frame had I not damaged that queen cell and just put that in a box and it would have raised its own queen. But we're going through here and doing splits. Very, very tight on space here. Lots of pollen, lots of nectar, all interspersed with the brood. So big space limitation here. Based on this, I may actually split this into 2 5 frames. This is really tight on space. This whole frame right here is pollen. And then there's just a few eggs. Anywhere she can find a spot to lay, she's doing it. Alright. Well, I may not do the 2 5s. Let's see. Like I said, we're running out of space, so I have to kind of be strategic about this. Okay, so no queen in here. She's not present in this colony. I'm going to go ahead and push this all together, just like it was. And like I had said initially, I'm not going to do a 5 frame out of this. I'm thinking as I'm going, which is what what this time of the year really is all about. You got to be able to think on your feet, because each one of these colonies is going to give you a different situation. No queen in here. All the elements of a good colony. Go ahead and add a queen to it, right there in the center with all that nice brood. And I'm going to go ahead and put this on another bottom board, and we've got another colony. So I hope you all learned a few things about splits during this session. You see that we did a 5 frame split. We did a variation of that where we kind of split up one box into 2, and then you saw that we did splits where we essentially just took a full box off of a colony that had all the elements of a split and put it onto a new bottom board to create a new colony. These are all variations that you can do, and this was all done on one hive. And I'm sure you all are hoping and wondering what happened with this hive. Well, we ended up getting 8 splits off of this hive. An enormous hive, huge colony, and yeah, it's one of those things that you can really work towards, is getting something like this to where you can make big expansions off of relatively a few number of colonies. Now, I do want to leave you with just a few notes about this. This is a Saskatraz colony of bees, and they do kind of we do kind of notice that they are more robust in the beginning of the season than most of our colonies. Out of all of the bees that I have Purdue ankle biters, Varroa sensitive hygienic bees, Saskatraz bees. We've got Carnies and Italians as well, and a lot of just Michigan mutts because they're overwintered colonies that have been requeened over and over again, and some of those queens we've raised ourselves that have made it here in Michigan. So, you know, a lot of variation as far as genetics within the yard, but these colonies, these tall colonies that you saw here, especially the 2 that I was alluding to at the beginning of the video, those are 2 of our biggest Saskatraz colonies that we have. And what we find with those colonies is they tend to build up very fast in the beginning of the season, and you end up with a situation like this. Now, there's a caveat to that, is if you are not an experienced beekeeper, or if you let this go too late, and you see that even here, I was kind of like at the end of this, where we were getting into a situation where we had queen cells on and the potential to swarm was definitely imminent. But with this type of a colony, with this Saskatraz line, at least from my experience and some of my colleagues' experience, you really got to be on your game in the beginning of the season. And so really an important part of preventing swarms when it comes to using splits is that in conjunction with what we did earlier, in the earlier video where we reversed colonies, that is one of 2 parts, is one piece of 2 parts that I use to prevent swarming at this time of the year. So we do reversals at the beginning of the spring, right when we can get into the colonies, meaning that it's warm enough to get into colonies and pull out frames. Generally, that I like to see 60-degree temperatures with nighttime lows above freezing before I start pulling out brood frames. But once we hit that, we do that spring reversal, and then we wait a few weeks. We let that colony build out, essentially, and then we come back and do splits. And by doing the reversal followed by the splits, we should be able to prevent swarming in these colonies. Now, that doesn't mean to say that you can just stop everything that you're doing and just, you know, think, oh, my swarms I've mitigated all of my swarms. That's not the case. You can always run out of space. But the big thing here is that this is part of that strategy. Now, from here on out, I'm going to come back to all of these colonies that I did splits on in a couple weeks after I've released the queen. So I'm going to come back in 2 days. After this video, I came back in 2 days, released the queens, and then I'm going to wait another 2 weeks and let them build out. I'll come back, I'll evaluate queens, I'll make sure that everything is queen rate, I'll make sure that queens are accepted, and I'll make sure that the colony looks healthy. And that's really the beginning of the regular part of maintenance of the season, is after that second visit where we actually evaluate them. We'll do full inspections at that point, so that's kind of like our beginning of the season. I hope you all enjoyed this video, and I'll look forward to making some more for you this season. Have a good one.